Welcome to the Punting is Winning podcast. Just two fans talking all things Hawkeyes. Here are your hosts, JD and Keith.
Welcome back, Hawkeye fans, to Punting is Winning, your all-Iowa podcast. Just two guys talking Iowa sports whenever possible. I'm your co-host, Keith, along with my co-host, JD. It's a post-July 4th weekend. It's kind of a busy weekend. Had a birthday party this weekend for my youngest, and so I just had a very busy weekend, smoking some meats, making a cheesecake that don't normally
good.
Make those very often.
It was very good.
I thought it turned out pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good. You can make a cheesecake for me anytime you want. I'd be fine with it.
Well, if I have an extra 10 hours to set one up, I can do that.
Well, I got a birthday coming up in September, so there you go.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. So
you want to give me a gift? There you go.
I can probably do that.
I don't ask for much.
That's a simple and easy, cheap gift.
I don't know about cheap.
Let's cover. Well, it's not that expensive. It's not. It's cheaper than
like
buying one at
the
a store.
Yeah,
I can make it cheaper than that.
You almost want to take out a second mortgage on the house to get one of those at the store.
Yeah,
they think they're pretty special. New York
style cheesecakes are
Yeah,
pretty expensive in the stores. So
yep,
nice to be able to make them at home and do it the right way and make it taste good. So
yeah, I know there's a lot of work involved in that.
Yeah. So, well, let's get on to answering the question last week, which was whether people liked fireworks displays or not. And I think the main reason why we talked about this or wanted to bring this one up was a lot of people have mixed feelings when it comes to fireworks. A lot of people like the look of the fireworks, don't necessarily like doing them themselves, and it does affect pets. And that's kind of the response that we got is people saying that they like to see the fireworks, they don't like letting them off themselves, which I fully understand that. I kind of like letting them off sometimes. I think more now that it's legal, it's probably less exciting because I think there was a thrill of, we're doing something that's, not necessarily kind of like drinking before you're age 21. Once you hit 21, sometimes it just kind of loses its luster. But yeah, I agree. There was a lot of people made comments about how they like the displays but don't like how it affects the animals because it's a loud noise and it does put them into a lot of anxiety. And I know you've got a couple of dogs and I've got some cats here, so I noticed how it affected them with the loud ones. But here in Bondurant, we had some great displays out in just from the regular townsfolk. We don't have a town display because we're so close to Prairie Meadows and Adventureland that we can see those. But townsfolk had pretty good display.
My biggest complaint is that if the neighbors are going to shoot some off, that's fine. I got to kind of gauge when I start hearing a bunch of them going off. I tend to notice that the dogs, especially the older one, and the younger one just emulates her as much as anything. And she runs and finds some place to hide, closet or wherever she thinks she's safe. And you got to kind of pull her up out of there. And then you got to kind of lay down with her and stroke her on the floor. And of course, then, the little one, the younger one, he decides he's got to get right in there too. And, so it's nice to cuddle with them, but by the same token, you're doing it for the reason that you really shouldn't have to. But that's okay. I'm not complaining. The neighbors are doing a good job of keeping it, relatively sane. And I know that there's been times in the past that they've got some really nice fireworks displays, some very expensive fireworks displays, and so they're pretty good. And it's just a recent thing with the two dogs we have that they just don't like them. So,
well, and I think that the fact that it's just a 2-day event, especially here, the city ordinance is 2 days, supposed to be 3rd and 4th. It's kind of lax. Sometimes you hear them on the 5th. I wasn't too fond of the one that went off at 2:30 in the morning on the 5th, but it happens. So get over it.
Yeah.
So anyhow,
what are we doing today?
Today, I thought since we have a little bit of a slowness in the realm of Hawkeye sports with between seasons. There's some basketball stuff going on, but there's really not a lot of reports coming out. Same with football. Guys are doing individual workouts. I thought we could do something a little fun and talk about our top 10 favorite games or most memorable games of the Kirk Ferentz era. And we can rank those in order. We'll do them in reverse. I'll do mine in reverse order for sure, from 10 to 1. I'm sure when we get down to the nitty gritty, we'll have a lot of the same games on here, maybe for different reasons, but there will be a lot of the same games. So I figured we kind of go through that, and maybe that's kind of something people could also comment back on that. Maybe it won't be the question of the week, but they can comment back what some of their favorite games were as well. Some of them that maybe we forgot or just didn't quite make the cut, just because there's so many games over the last, you think Kirk Ferentz has been here for almost 25 years, so got a lot of time to choose from. So some of those games were exceptionally good games, but just, there were some that just were better.
Right. And, some, like you said earlier, some of these are on our list for kind of selfish reasons. Maybe they were special to us.
Right.
But maybe not necessarily special to anyone else. I've got maybe 2 on here that I think were kind of special for me. And one that I left completely off that I really probably should put on, but I didn't. And maybe I'll mention that after.
Okay.
But why don't you go ahead and let's see your list.
Okay. I'm not going to put the list up. I'm just going to go through it.
Let's hear your list. How's that?
My number 10 was 2008 Minnesota 55-0. The reasons behind that, we had kind of a party with the guys were season ticket holders at the time, and we had a little get together because that was a road game at the Metrodome, and we just had a little get together, chili supper, but one night, and just a total shellacking, 55-0. Sean Green, of course, that was the year he ran for 100 yards in every game plus, and ended up with 1,851 on the year. So to me, that was a special game, and anytime you shut out the Gophers, that's great. Especially 55-0. So I enjoyed that one.
I remember that one. I was sitting at home watching that one and was like, I'd like to see a kill game rather than a thrill game just every once in a while.
Yeah.
And from Iowa,
absolutely.
You don't get those very often. So, it was very nice to see kind of a relaxing game that you could. The defense just dominated. I don't think Minnesota crossed the 50-yard line more than twice the whole game.
And when they did, they got punished.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, and that's the staple of Iowa defense, is just to punish, cause turnovers. There was I know there was a pick six right before the end of the half, and I kind of remember if Darrell Johnson-Koulianos is listening to this, I hope he doesn't hate on me for this, but the shoulder that he gave, that Sean Green gave him running down the field, it's hard to forget that. So that was my number 10. My number 9, I go to 2015, the 27-24 win over Pitt. The reasons behind that, obviously the 57-yard field goal at the end of the game is huge, but that was also the game that the team was led out by Brett Greenwood. And that, seeing that story and hearing that story and following him from the time that he was a freshman at Iowa through his senior year and into the pros and training camps, it was one of those things that it was a heartfelt thing, and being able to see him walk out there on that field that night was just
an emotional lift for Iowa.
Yeah, and it was awe-inspiring to people. So that's why I have that one number 9 on my list. Certainly, for that reason alone, it could have been a little bit higher, but there's just some other games on here that fit that bill. So I'll go to my number 8, was also in 2015. It was the week prior to that, which was the 31-17 win over Iowa State. That coming off the heels of the death of Tyler Sash and the death of Roy Marble in that same week. So it was a very, very emotional week for that team and for the university and all its fans. And, it's always extra special when you beat Iowa State. I know that some people will say, Iowa State treats it like Super Bowl, and Iowa State fans will say Iowa does. To me, I don't like the game. I just think it's causes too much animosity amongst the fan bases between each other. I would like to see it go away for that reason alone. But I realize why it's there and why people like it. And that was, that was one of the most special ones, I think, just because of how the team played in the wake of the tragic news that they got throughout the week with Roy Marble and Tyler Sash. And, being from Southern Iowa and seeing Tyler Sash play against our high school when he was in high school, basketball. He didn't play football against our team, but we did play him at basketball, and that was kind of an emotional thing to watch, and it was nice to beat Iowa State in that manner. So my number 7 is 2009 17-16 win over Northern Iowa. 2 block kicks at the end of the game. I think the reason for me was I think that was the first game that I took my boys to. And we were on the home side, and it was the 3 of us sitting there watching that game, and it was fun. And, I thought, oh boy, this is just horrible for me to bring them to a game that they're going to lose. But, Iowa was able to pull it out in the end. Wasn't pretty, but it did it sure started something very pretty for the rest of that season. And, nobody's going to convince me that had Ricky Stanzi not gotten hurt, Iowa probably could have gone through undefeated and been potentially playing for a national championship.
Yeah.
If not that, they're definitely playing that 3-4 game.
I was at that game and he got hurt. That was the Northwestern game, and I was in the north end zone, and I said it right in front of us. And when he went down, I went, "Oh no, we're in trouble." And James Vandenberg, if I remember right, came in, and he looked like he hadn't thrown much or played much. So down the line, he got better. Ohio State later that year.
Really good against Ohio State.
Yeah, he did really well against Ohio State. But if he would have put in the kind of game he had against Ohio State, if he'd have put that in against Northwestern, because we were leading 10-0, and then when he fumbled or when he got hurt, he fumbled the ball, and of course Northwestern got on and made it 10-7. And it kind of went downhill from there.
Well, it ended up 14-10, wasn't it? Or was it
17-14, maybe, or 17-10.
17-10.
I don't know. It was close to that. So, it wasn't a situation where, if he'd had a little bit of something, we probably could have taken that game and continued on that magical season. But, things happen and injuries happen. So.
Yep, that's true. So that leads me to my number 6. My number 6, we go back all the way to 2002, a 31-28 win over Purdue. I remember being at that game. I was in the south end zone. Some friends of ours were there with us, with their dad, and I think when Purdue scored and went up 28-24 with, I don't know, it was about a minute and a half, 2 minutes to go in the game, they got up and left, and I couldn't do it. I was sitting there thinking, I just don't want to leave yet. Something's going to happen. And I just had a gut feeling. And, Iowa took that first snap, and Brad Banks took off and rumbled, 55 yards down the field, got him in field goal range, but a field goal wasn't going to win the game for him. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the throwback pass with, I don't know, about maybe a minute left to Dallas Clark on 4th down.
Right.
It was something to see. And that was prior to the south end zone being renovated. So those were the old wooden bleachers. They were rumbling. Yeah. And so it was a little scary standing up there, because you didn't know if that was going to collapse, because there was so much rowdiness going on. But that one, that's a game that's hard to forget. Number 5, I also stay in 2002, and I'm sure you probably have this one on your list. 34-9 win over Michigan at the Big House. The thing the most memorable is just the shellacking of Michigan, and doing it up there. Something that Iowa hadn't done in an extremely long time was actually go up there and win a game. But not only that, but just to thoroughly dominate them. I remember the shovel pass to Jermel Lewis, and he just absolutely trucked that guy about the 5-yard line, ran him over for a touchdown. Just an absolute blessing of a game to watch as a Hawkeye fan. anytime you beat Michigan or Ohio State or Iowa State, Michigan, anytime you win a game, it's great. But when
Especially
you're
on the
winning
road.
against, if you're beating Michigan, Ohio State, or Penn State, to me, I think those are the three. Those are the big dogs, and Wisconsin. I'd say those are the ones that probably mean the most to you. So that one I will stay in my mind, and it could have been a little bit higher too. But the games that I have above it, just you'll understand why. Number 4, 2017, Ohio State, 55-24. How could anybody ever forget that? So unexpected on the wake of just getting boat raced at Penn State.
Yeah.
Well, no, actually, that's not even right, because that was the year before when Iowa played Michigan. Was the Penn State game was prior to that.
Well, 2017 wasn't a great year for Iowa, and they just happened to win. Were they 8-5 that year?
Something like that. I know they played after the Ohio State game. They went to Wisconsin, and I think the only scores we had were the 2 Josh Jackson pick sixes. Got beat like 31-14 or 38-14, something like that. But yeah, anytime you beat Ohio State, especially when you can hang 55 on them, it's just and Nate Stanley was incredible in that game. Everybody just played well. It was a full team effort. Guys getting in on the act. I think it was Drake Kulik catching a pass out in the flat for a touchdown. Was it LaShawn Daniels scored the final one when he was kind of no, it wasn't LaShawn Daniels.
LaShawn Daniels.
Torrin Young. Yeah. Scored that final touchdown. So, yeah, anytime you beat Ohio State, it's great. My number 3 is 2016, and the aforementioned Michigan game on the heels of getting shellacked by Penn State, beating Michigan 14-13.
Good one.
The field goal that I think it's kind of like when Iowa beat Michigan in 1985. You listen to Brent Musburger. It's the kick is up, and it's good. It's like he was disappointed the fact that Iowa won that, and it seemed kind of that way. The excitement of that kick was kind of that way with Nessler and Herb Street were doing that game. I think, yeah. It just seemed like there was less excitement, that they just felt like, oh well, we're Michigan, and Michigan was undefeated at the time. Iowa was 5-4, Michigan was 9-0. You could go talk about that 2008 when Iowa was 5-4 and Penn State was 8-0, and Iowa beat them on that last second field goal. Daniel Murray kicking. I didn't even have that one on the list, and that could have been there.
Yeah, I was at a wedding on that Michigan game that Iowa won when Michigan was undefeated and ranked number 1 or number 2. So I was at a wedding and a wedding reception, and by the time it was out of town. So by the time we got back to the hotel, the game was pretty much over. It was over, and I didn't get to see anything until I got home, and I had DVR'd it, and so I got to watch the game the next day. But I already knew how it came out, so it was kind of anticlimactic. Yeah.
I was actually out of town too. I was at a friend's house, and we had turned it on in the background. We were playing games that night. It was game night, and we had it on in the background, and Iowa had picked that ball off. Manny Vergumba picked that ball off, and then Beathard threw that interception down about the 20-yard line or so. And I thought, well, this game's over, and we turned it off and went back to playing. The next thing I know, my phone's buzzing that Iowa had won, and I'm like, what? So, of course, then when I get home, I had to DVR it as well, so I had to watch the whole thing all over again. But, it was a fun game to watch, and it's hard to think, you forget about the fact that Iowa actually outstatted Michigan in that game. They outrushed them. They had more yards, total yards on the game. So Iowa actually outplayed them, but it felt like Iowa was not really ever out of the game, but they really didn't truly feel like they were in it. Yeah. So fun game there. My number 2, go back to 2009 at Michigan State, 15-13, 7 got 6. I'll never forget that call with Marvin McNutt catching that ball from Rick Stanzi in the end zone as time expired on 4th down. I just remember sitting on the couch at home. I was supposed to be working a haunted house that night, and I said, nope, I'm going to watch the Iowa game because they're undefeated. And boy, I'm glad I did, because that was a heck of a game. Hard-fought game. I mean, that was one of those that was kind of, and that was the same defensive coordinator as Pitt had for head coach. Pat Narduzzi was the defensive coordinator of Michigan State. And you always knew that was going to be a tough defense to score against and to put up yards against. They're kind of like, they were a mirror image of Iowa, what Iowa is. And he always put good defenses out there. So that was just a fun game to watch. And it was just such a tough, hard-nosed Big Ten football game.
Right.
And my number one, which is probably most people's number one, 2004, 30-25 over LSU. That just seemed like, I remember I felt like I had jinxed the team because I'd gotten a tattoo about a week before, and because they'd had such a decent season, and I got the tattoo, the first Iowa tattoo ever, for myself. And then that, they throw that, was it Jamarcus Russell threw the touchdown pass with about 47 seconds left. And I was just sitting on the floor on my knees with my head down. And I can remember almost going through the ceiling of the living room when he threw that pass to Warren Holloway and he scored on that. It's just, that was a game of highs, lows, and then back to high again.
I've seen that game since. And if you don't get a really nice return on that kickoff, you don't win that game.
Yeah.
That was
Ed Hinkle.
Yeah. And he got it to like the 43-yard line or something. And they made one quick pass over the middle, and then it was Tate to Holloway.
Well, didn't it? I think Ed Hinkle had the block downfield too. That actually, because there's only one guy that had a chance at, because there was blown coverage all the way.
Mm-hmm.
Only one guy had a chance at him, and I think Hinkle got him so that Holloway could score. So, I mean, give the game ball to Ed Hinkle on that one.
Yeah.
But it's always going to be remembered as the catch. But there were a lot of guys that contributed to that. And I think the other one was, if you think about the fact that, and it didn't end up being part of the final score, but I think, didn't Matt Roth have on the 2-point conversion that they tried at the end of the game?
Yeah.
He had stuff in the backfield. So, that didn't end up having a bearing on the game, but still a huge momentum thing. Had you let them get that 2-point conversion, it's 27-24. Thinking, well, a field goal at best ties it. You're trying to get in field goal range to tie it. Whereas before, with that stop, you're going to win it.
I think we had one timeout, right? And I was kept yelling, take a timeout. And they didn't. And I'm like, I hope they realize they do have a timeout, right? And I think what they were trying to do is if the pass was successful but didn't score, they could take a timeout and kick the field goal and tie it. But they were really running out of time because they didn't realize that the clock was still running. It was like 9 seconds when they started that play. And I'm like, they're not going to get something. They're not going to get any time left. I mean, if they want to call a timeout, it's going to be too late.
Well, and I think Dolph said this. Dolph said the same thing. They're going to have to score on this play.
Yeah,
this is it. So that's my list. I know some people would probably have some other games on there, but
oddly, we don't have that many. Actually, we have
really
5.
Well,
5 out of the 10 are the same. Yeah, but
you also had an honorable mention.
I do have an honorable mention. I couldn't narrow it down to just 10.
Well, and I suppose if I had an honorable mention, I'd probably have to throw in that Penn State game in 2008, the Sean Green game, Green for Heisman. I was at that game. So, and it was cold. That was a cold game, but it's still a fun one. So let's hear your list.
Okay. I'm going to start out with honorable mention. Honorable mention from December 27th of 2019, Iowa Holiday Bowl against USC. The Amir Smith-Marset game. He scored 3 different ways. Caught a pass for a touchdown. Almost 4. Caught a pass for a touchdown. Rush on an end around for a touchdown. And got a kickoff return for a touchdown. And Iowa dominated that game. It was very surprising. I know a lot of the pundits didn't have Iowa even really much of a chance in the game, and Iowa dominated it, and it was 49-24 was your final, and it really wasn't even that close. So that's my honorable mention.
People will say that had USC's quarterback not gone out, it might have been a different story.
Yeah.
You know,
it might not have been too.
Ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas, right?
Exactly. Correct. Okay. Honorable mentions done. Let's go number 10. And this one's you're going to shake your head a little bit or scratch your head a little bit on this one. December 29th, 2001. Iowa's first bowl win under Kirk Ferentz. They beat Texas Tech 19-16. And I just thought that was significant enough to put it on the list, that was his first bowl win. And I had another couple that I messed with the idea of putting them on here. And I just had too many others that I just couldn't do it. It was like their first win after their first Big Ten win was Michigan State, like in 2001, because they had gone the 2000, yeah. It was in the 2000 season, they had gone for the Big Ten. They'd beaten only Northern Illinois.
I almost put the 1999 Northern Illinois game on my list just because it was his first win.
Yeah.
Yep.
But, so that was that one. I guess my number 9 was September 28, 2002 was their first win over a ranked team. And that was Penn State. 42-35 in overtime. It was a good game. It was fun to watch. It was back and forth. And the overtime tells you everything you need to know. It was that close of a game. And Iowa took them down. They were ranked 12th at the time. So
that shouldn't have been that close of a game. If I remember right. Iowa had a pretty big lead. And then, and they kind of fell apart towards the end of the fourth. But they managed to pull it out and got their first ranked win under the Kirk Ferentz era. So that was my number 9. Number 8, this is more of a kind of a personal, selfish reason why I want this one on here. November the 20th, 2004. They beat number 9 Wisconsin in Iowa City 30-7. Yep.
And I stood in that north end zone, and this was like, I want to say, I stood there. I must have been one of the last 50 people out of the stadium. It was a cooler day. It was in November. It was towards the end of the season. Silly. And me and another guy that sat with us for years and years, we just stood up there and it was so serene. And it was just a beat down that you didn't see coming, because Wisconsin was number 9 in the nation at the time. Mm-hmm. And Iowa just thoroughly dominated them. And I stood up there and just watched out over the field. Everybody had left. There's only like 50 people maybe in the whole stadium, and most of them were people that were just malingering like I was, lingering around. And it was the calmest I felt ever at a ball game, after a ball game. Usually you're so high, or you're excited to the win, or you're bummed because they lost. And this one was kind of like, wow, that was such a great game. That Iowa just dominated, and they looked good everywhere, form and fashion they could look. They looked good, and I thought this is the pinnacle so far of the Kirk Ferentz era, and it was probably, 2004. It was pretty young yet. He was anyway. So that's
I was in the south end. I was in the south end zone for that game, and they clinched the share of the Big Ten title because Michigan had beaten Ohio State earlier, or was it the other way around? No, it was Michigan beat Ohio State, wasn't it? Earlier in the day.
Remember, I know.
So we knew going into that game that the winner of the Iowa-Wisconsin game was going to share the Big Ten, and it had Wisconsin won, they probably would have went to the Rose Bowl.
Right. So that's my number 8. Now my number 7 and your number 5 are the same. My number 7 is October 26, 2002. Number 8, Michigan. Jermel Lewis. He only had like 115 yards total, and caught a pass for a touchdown, but he just was so dominating. And, when you needed him to get a first down, he got a first down, to extend the clock. And 34-9, you really didn't need to, but it just felt like Iowa was kind of in cruise control. And I remember I was at Grandma's house down in Seymour, and we had just got done pheasant hunting, Dad and I, and we came in for lunch, and the game was on. We had turned the game on. We got in early enough to get the game, and we just sat back and enjoyed it. It was a great time. and Iowa dominated, and that, you can't ask much more for a good Saturday than something like that. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah. Okay, number 6, October 18th, 2008. This is the Iowa game over Wisconsin that Sean Green ran for 217 yards. And my wife and I were in northern, where were we? We were in northeast Iowa, way up in the northeast Iowa by the Mississippi River, having lunch. A little town called Balltown. She'd wanted to go up and look at the leaves. That was her big thing. And we had given up our tickets by then.
You go up on a Hawkeye game day to look at leaves?
We were at the restaurant at the time. They had the game on. And we sat in the bar and watched the game, or most of it, before we retired to the family down in Cascade. So, that one was just fun to watch him run through Wisconsin, and he just seemed like he scored from like 60 yards, and then he'd run from 55, and had a really good game, and on his way to a Doak Walker Award winner that year at the 5, if I'm not mistaken. So,
yep.
That was number 5, that was number 6 for me. Number 5 for me was your number 6. The Dallas Clark game against Purdue in 2002. Yep. Dallas had run a 95-yard swing pass right at us in the north end zone. And I thought, well, this doesn't get better than this. Well, then Purdue went down and scored and went ahead, like you said, 28-24. And then Iowa got the ball pretty deep after that run from Brad Banks. And they rolled out left and threw back right and on 4th down. And I'm thinking, what are you doing?
That was our end zone too. We were right there.
I was watching.
He's wide open.
That would have happened in the south end zone. And so I watched, you see that the Dallas Clark would have been in the 3rd quarter. And then the other one would have been in the 4th, because
the other direction.
He was running at me in the 3rd and going away from me in the 4th. So, and then, believe it or not, Iowa had to have a late stop to keep Purdue from.
Yeah, do you remember who that was? I was just going to ask you. I can tell you who it was. They also had a blocked punt for that in that game for a touchdown.
It wasn't Greenwood. Right. Who was it?
No. It was a guy that that was probably the highlight of his Iowa career. His guy's name was Adolphus Shelton.
Adolphus Shelton. Yep. I did read that. I thought about that now. Once you said that, it kind of rang a bell.
And I can't remember if it was a blocked punt for a touchdown or if it was a blocked field goal for a touchdown in that game.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and read the game summary of that again. I know they play that on the Big Ten Network every once in a great while, but what a game. It was just enjoyable. It was back and forth. The crowd was into it. It was intense.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot of fun. Iowa had a good season going that year. And to win it the way they did was just really kind of rewarding for a fan, standing.
You knew something. You knew there was something special about that season when that happens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they had a great season.
Because that doesn't happen to Iowa.
And one of the things that I wish I could say on this list is that Iowa in 2002 playing Ohio State for the Big Ten championship. You don't get to say that because it didn't happen.
No,
I think Iowa would have probably given Ohio State a better game than anybody else did, because they won the national championship with an undefeated year.
Absolutely.
And I think if they'd played Iowa, I think they would not have been undefeated. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but we'll never know. So, okay. Number 4. This is for the game, not for the outcome. December 5th, 2015 Big Ten championship game. That was a great game. That Michigan State, Iowa Big Ten championship, that was a great game. Unfortunately, Iowa lost. But I have it on the list because that was one fantastic game. That one might have been one of the best games I ever watched on TV. It was nip and tuck. Michigan State had 4th down conversions going on that final drive that you just one tackle.
One tip. Yeah, one
tackle,
one tick.
And Iowa wins that.
One tackle.
And they're in the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. So that's why I have it on the list. It was just a great game. Unfortunate the outcome, but what could have been,
Yeah.
whatever.
I
But
try not
that's
to bring
fine.
up those memories.
Yeah, I know, but it was such a good game. I couldn't leave it off
Yeah.
the list. Okay, number 3, oddly, was your number 2.
Michigan
Stanley to
State.
McNutt, 2009, October 24, 2009. That's one of those games, like you said, it's just, how do you beat it?
Yeah.
You
It's
don't.
kind of, where were you when this happened?
Exactly.
Like
I know where I was. I was sitting right here on my living room floor. And when he hit him with that pass, I think my head hit the ceiling, and I got 9-foot ceilings.
Yeah.
So I come up out of my stance, and mom and dad were actually up at that time. And I think he come out of there and, with his reconstructed knee. And I think he almost hit the ceiling too. And both of us just, and my mom and my wife were like looking at us like, what's going on? Why are you guys going like that? Well, they both knew what was going on. So they just kind of,
Yeah.
But that was a good game. That was my number 3. Now, my number 2 is your number 1. January 1st, 2005, LSU, Tate to Holloway. Oddly enough, we had been in Iowa City the night before and watching a Iowa basketball game, and it had rained over the course of the evening, over the night, and everything turned to solid ice. And I was concerned that we were going to meet back at our folks in the farm there, and I was concerned that we weren't going to make it. I got probably 30 miles west of Iowa City before the ground started to kind of get drier, and I was able to actually drive more than 15 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour, because it took us forever getting out of Iowa City. It took us forever to get onto the interstate. Nobody was moving anywhere. I had a front wheel drive car, and nobody was moving. And I scratch my head now thinking, what did I even try it for? I could have just stayed there and watched the game. But once you got 30 miles out of town, everything was pretty much open and you could drive the limit. And, but yeah, that was an odd thing that we'd watched Iowa play basketball the night before.
I have a feeling I know what your number 1's going to be.
My number 1 is your number 4.
Yep.
The November 4th, 2017, Iowa blows out Ohio State. 55-24. That was a Josh Jackson. Did he have like 5 interceptions or 4 or 3?
He had 3 picks.
3 picks. And they were, at least, I know one of them in the end zone was an acrobatic one-handed pull it down.
Yeah, he got that at about the 2 or 3 yard line. And then Amani Hooker had the pick off to start the game.
Yeah, for
6
a touchdown.
seconds into the game. Yeah.
In fact, wasn't it the first play that they...
Yeah, first offensive play.
Ohio State dropped back and threw to the flat over on the right side, and bam, there he was, and knew kind of waltzed in for a touchdown, and the route was on at that point.
Yeah,
that was never looked back.
That was kind of one of the emergences of T.J. Hawkinson. In that game as well, because I remember the play where the Ohio State defender had Stanley by the ankle and he just planted and threw a dart to T.J. Hawkinson.
Yeah. What a great game. And that's, from an Iowa fan, beating Ohio State comes so infrequently that you got to grasp everything, especially when you beat them down like that. It's kind of like, here's redemption for all those times when you beat us down. And it happened to us a lot more
broke
often.
Our hearts.
Yeah.
Bobby Olive.
Bobby Olive. Yeah.
Yeah.
That one hurt.
I figured we'd have some of the same, but there's some interesting on there that for each of us for different reasons.
Yeah, it was fun. It's fun to do.
And you think about it. There's other games that could have made the list. You think about 2009 Indiana when everything was going wrong, and all of a sudden here comes Rick Stanzi in the fourth quarter being a completely different quarterback, and within 2 plays, we're back in the lead, and Brandon Wager runs that final one in to push that to 45-28 or something like that. And made it look a lot worse than it really was. But that was, Indiana was putting it to us. And Rick Stanzi, I think, threw 5 picks that game and just did not look like himself. And boy, they found a way. And, other games that I think about, 2002 against Minnesota, tearing down the goalposts. I thought that might be on your list.
That would have been
Since
on
you
my
were
list.
there.
I was going to mention it because I was there. I wasn't participating in the goalpost going out to the revolving door. That was probably not the most intelligent thing. I think there was some alcohol involved with that situation.
I think
But-
your understanding of physics prevented you from doing that.
Yeah. I graduated and I had been through my physics class a couple of different, two different physics classes. And so I knew that watching them go through that, and I'm like, well, I don't know where they're going to take that out of because everything here is a revolving door. They're going to have to take it out through a side door somewhere in the back that you can't see. But they got it so far to the door, and then they decided, can't get it out of here, so we'll just drop it. They dropped it in the lobby out there.
So here's a question for you. Do you remember what Iowa's first ranked win was in the Kirk Ferentz era?
Yeah, I had it on
win.
here. That they beat
That Iowa beat a ranked team.
Yeah, I got it here. It's 2002, September 28th against Penn State.
That's not correct. That's not correct. It's 2000 against Northwestern. Kept Northwestern from going to the Rose Bowl. Iowa won 27-17 in that game because I remember I had a guy offer me $100 for my Washington Redskins coat that game because it was so cold.
They only had 3 wins that season, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was Michigan State, Penn State, and Northwestern. They lost all their non-conference games.
Iowa State. They lost.
They played well against Minnesota that year. Another one that I think about is the shellacking of Minnesota. What was it, 55-28? The Ed Hinkle game after with a broken arm. There's just so many games that you can go back to and say, man, the Outback Bowl against South Carolina, the Outback Bowl against Florida,
the Mississippi State game.
Yeah.
Do you remember a game? And I have to look this up because I didn't. Do you remember a game when Iowa beat Illinois 63-0?
Yeah, that was
in the
in
Kirk Ferentz era?
2017, I think, or 2018. AJ Epinesa had a touchdown on a pick.
Yeah,
a fumble recovery.
Yeah, it's kind of like reminding you of that Minnesota game where they beat them 55-0. It was 63-0.
Complete laugher.
And it wasn't that long ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 2018. I think
could have been
was the year.
Yeah,
I have to think back because I remember it was at Champaign, and things snowballed on them in the second quarter. I remember that's where it kind of just fell apart for Illinois. Not that Illinois was that good. And I think the year before that, or 2 years before that, in 2016 was the year we beat them 28-0 there. So 2 years we played them there, we outscored them like 81-0. So,
well, let's hope we do that again this year. I'd like to see
that would be nice. I'd like to see Iowa do that in basketball.
It'll be over Minnesota.
Well, I'll take that over anybody.
Yeah, that would mean that the Tim Lester offense is actually working.
I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, I'm ready to see it. I'm ready. I'm chomping at the bit, ready to see Iowa start their season.
Yeah, me too. So
that was fun.
Yeah, that was. It's nice to go back and reminisce because I got a lot of these games recorded and I can go back and watch them a lot of times.
Yeah, a lot of them are on YouTube.
They're a little more fresh in my mind, but yeah, some of them are. Thinking back on it, so many good games that could have put on. Another one I could think about was the comeback with James Vandenberg against Pitt at home in 2014 maybe. No, it wouldn't have been 2014. 2011. I'll bet it was.
It was 2011 because I remember that was the night that I had a class reunion.
Yeah. So, there's just a ton of games that could have been on there. And I tried to not be as recency biased as I could because a lot of those are more, obviously the USC game would have been one that I could have put on there easily enough.
Yeah.
Even the Boston College game was a fun game to watch playing on that ice arena that was, Yankee Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, just a lot of good games in there that they could throw in there.
So, what do you think? We're going to wrap this up with the question of the week.
Yeah. You said you had a question of the week.
I do.
You were going to keep me in the dark on.
I'm
so
keeping you in the dark on this one. Okay. Here's the question: who holds the record for the longest field goal at Kinnick Stadium and give me the yardage. I'm not going to give you any hints.
And okay.
The longest field goal.
I think I know who it is.
At Kinnick Stadium. And how long was it?
I think I know who it is, but I'm not going to say. I'll say off air, see if I'm right, because I don't want to give any hints away.
Okay.
And I'll tell you this, it was longer than Marshall Cain's. But not by a lot.
That's right.
So, yeah, I think he went on to have a very prominent professional career, if I remember right.
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah. And I maybe not thinking the same guy, but I know somebody who had a pretty strong leg, and it was back in the, I won't even say. We'll leave it at that. We'll see if people can get it.
Leave it at that. Let people see if I'll see if people can put it in the comments who it is.
Yeah.
Now this is just the person who had the longest field goal in
Not
Kinnick
the
Stadium
Iowa
history.
kicker with the longest.
Not Iowa kicker. Anybody.
Yeah, because you could say the same thing about who holds the record for most rushing yards in Kinnick Stadium in a single game, and it wouldn't be a Hawkeye.
No. It's a kid out of Northern Illinois, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think I was at that game.
LaShawn Johnson?
I think that's right.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
He
had like 328 yards on Iowa.
Yeah, and the next closest from Iowa was Tavian Banks. 289.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. I remember watching.
I
remember getting off work, working the night shift, and going home. We had the old big satellite dish, and Monday mornings I could turn it over to a certain satellite, and they would always show the old Northern Illinois games. So I'd watch those games on Monday, and it was LaShawn Johnson, or I think it was LaShawn Johnson. And
yeah, that's right.
That was probably that year. So anyway.
So everybody, if you would do us a big favor, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
And if you want to comment, if you want to answer the question, please do so. We'd like to have somebody get the right answer. Eventually, if we get good enough at it, maybe we'll give away something for it. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Also, don't forget that we are still on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So if you don't like the video format and want to listen to it in your car, you can still listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Pod something or other. Podstream, I think, is the other one that we're on.
Well, so just as long as you're listening, we're fine with it. And you can watch just as simple as you can listen to it. If you're in the car and you want to listen to it, that's fine. If you're at home and you want to watch it, it's available there too. So
we'll take any kinds of support we can get.
I would encourage everyone to subscribe if they can, and look forward to getting as many subscribers as we can get, so we can get our podcast out there so people can listen.
They want to listen to a couple of crazy guys that talk Iowa sports.
We're not the only ones.
Yeah, I know.
There's a lot of them out there, but
I guess with that said, that leads us to the inevitable Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
So we'll talk to you next week, everybody.